Mandukya Rahasya Vivritihi, a Sanskrit treatise by His Holiness Sri 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 Sachidananda Saraswati Mahaswamiji, HoLenaraseepur. In this English introduction, we have been seeing in 6 sessions. Today's is the 7th session. Today's topic is Veda and Buddhism. What Sri Swamiji said about. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Veda and Buddhism. It is well known that Buddhism was a revolt against Vedic religion, at least in two respects. In the first place, it abhorred the sacrificial cult involving animal slaughter, and in the second place, it abolished the doctrine of the Atman, who had been believed by the Vedikas to survive the body in order to be able to enjoy the fruits of his karma. As a corollary to his opposition to sacrifices, perhaps Buddha could entertain no respect for the authority of the Vedas as a revelation. His teaching that everything was impermanent was against the Vedic doctrine too. This spirit of hostility too was very naturally resented by Mimamsakas like Shabaraswamin and Kumarila, and possibly by the author of Mimamsa Sutras himself, Jaimini Muni, if we are to believe that the sutras are post-Buddhistic as scholars declare. The sutra defining dharma as that which is known only by means of a Vedic injunction, Chodana Lakshanortho Dharmaha, Jaimini Sutra 112, and the subsequent sutras which undertake to examine the other pramanas before concluding that Shabda alone is the valid means of knowledge in the case of Dharma, is perhaps intended to show that the Vedas ought to be accepted as an authority in matters transcendental. Shabara's discussion about the existence of the Atman apart from the body and his explanation of the examination of the Niralambana and Shunya theories support this view. Add to this Kumarila's attack on the Sarvajnata, omniscience of Buddha, while defending the validity of the Vedas as a means of knowledge, and the counter arguments by the Dharmakirti and Prajnakara to disprove the authoritativeness of the Vedas and enthusiastically to maintain the infallibility of Buddha, and the matter becomes quite intelligible in this light. Fourth one, Upanishads and Buddhism. But the attitude of Buddhism towards the Upanishads is by no means so very clear. Professor Murthy indeed maintains that in the dialogues of Buddha, there is a distinct spirit of opposition, if not one of hostility as well, to the Atmavada of the Upanishads. I hesitate to endorse this view. In the sutras, no doubt Buddha teaches again and again that in no one of the skandhas can we recognize the Atman, and there is no other Atman independent of them. But no reference whatsoever is found to be made there to the one constant Atman common to all. I have already said that no reference is seen in the entire range of Buddhist literature to the examination of the three states establishing the transcendental Atman. Arguments that three states means waking, dream, and deep sleep. Arguments from silence are not always positive proofs, but yet I invite the attention of scholars to this uniform silence of the Buddhists. This point may perhaps be of some use in settling the relation of the Buddhistic systems and Vedanta. It is sometimes maintained that Buddha's condemnation of rituals and the outward forms of caste system as contrasted with the intrinsic character is very much the same as that found in the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita. The implication is perhaps either that Buddhism is an evolution out of the Upanishadic thought, or else that its chief target for criticism is the philosophy of the Upanishads rather than forms of Vedic religion. Neither of the interpretations seems to fit in with the facts. The Upanishads and the Gita no doubt contain occasional passages seemingly scoffing at karma, but a careful study of the context of such passages would go to show that Vedanta, unlike Buddhism, is not a wholesale condemnation of all karma. It only teaches how karma, instead of being considered as an end in itself, can be sublimated into a valuable means to Brahma Vidya. Looked at from this viewpoint, the Upanishad may be said to fulfill rather than destroy the ritualistic portion of the Veda. The only conclusion, therefore, justifiable in these circumstances is to regard Advaita and their Buddhistic views as interpretations of their respective sources of inspiration, quite independent of each other, to wit, the Vedas comprehending the Upanishads on the one hand, and the Nikayas and Sutras venerated as the word of Buddha on the other. Next, Agama and reason. Consistent with the above contention is the fact that Gaudapada and Nagarjuna appeal to their own traditional teaching for support of their systems. Shankara, the commentator of Gaudapada's Prakaranas, insists that Advaita is realized through reason as well as Agama. It is significant that he begins his commentary on each chapter with some reference to Agama. I have already stated that the word Agama in this connection means not authoritative Shastra but the right way of traditional teaching. Chandrakirti likewise seems to be anxious to point out that Nagarjuna is the correct interpreter of the Bauddha traditional teaching. He extols Nagarjuna's work as especially devoted to the skillful distinction between sutras of primary and secondary import. He draws our attention to the fact that Nagarjuna has not only given yukti, reasons, but adduced agama texts as well, and he himself quotes freely from the relevant authorities at the end of each chapter of his Madhyamika Vritti. It is evident from the above that call to tradition as well as reason is common to both Gaudapada and Nagarjuna. But then there is this difference in the order of their appeal, which stares us in the face. For Gaudapada it is Agama first and reason next, and for Nagarjuna it is reason first and then Agama. It will be recalled how Gaudapada's very first chapter is called Agama Prakarana, and then the remaining chapters are supposed to give prominence to reasoning. Nagarjuna, on the other hand, states his reasons first of all in each of his chapters for rejecting certain views, and then cites some Buddha's teaching in corroboration of his statement. The net result of this difference is that Gaudapada takes his stand upon an indubitable fact of experiences suggested by the Shruti, the intuitional experience of the three states, and employs reason only to explain the apparent contradictions involved in its manifestation, whereas Nagarjuna trusts in the dictates of pure unaided reason and engages it in self-criticism, a task too much above its capacity, for it can never be expected to overstep itself. Samaptam chedam madhyamaka shastram sakala lokottara pravachana nita neyartha vyakhyana naipunya visharadam iti. Before closing our reflections on Agama, it is necessary to remember one more point in this connection. Both Gaudapada and Nagarjuna lay emphasis on particular texts of their Agama and consider them to be of ultimate import and subordinate other texts to them. Texts of primary importance are called Nitartha by the Madhyamika and Nischita and Yukta by Gaudapada. We shall have occasion to enter into the details of the principles involved in this interpretation later on when we take up Shankara's interpretation of Gaudapada. Next point, the two different types of reasoning. Lest I be accused of an over hasty judgment in the matter, I invite the reader to compare the two different types of reasoning used by these two thinkers. For Nagarjuna, reason has the sole function of examining the different possible views of phenomena of the waking state and comes to the astounding conclusion that things are without any nature of their own. To make my statement more explicit, I shall allow myself a little digression here. It is well known that Buddha laid great emphasis on his teaching of Pratitya Samutpada in the Arya Shalistambha Sutra. He is made to say, Yo bhikshav pratitya samutpadam pashyati sadharma pashyati sadharmam pashyati yo dharmam pashyati sabuddham pashyati. Whoever sees pratitya samutpada, he sees the dharma, and whoever sees the dharma, he sees the Buddha. This is an often quoted agama text in Buddhist literature. Pratitya samutpada, dependent origination is a theory expressed by the formula asmin sati idam bhavati. This being there, this follows. It means that avidya, samskara, vijnana, namarupa, sadayatana, sparsha, vedana, trishna, upadana, bhava, jati and jara marana together form a chain of 12 links of causes and effects. In accordance with this, the Abhidharmika system of Sarvastitvavadins believed that nothing came into being without particular causes and conditions. Hetu pratyaya. The word pratitya samutpada literally means origin as conditioned by necessary causes. These pratyayas conditions are 4 in number. Hetu, direct cause, samanantara, immediate cause, alambana, objective cause of mental processes, and adhipati, additional or invariably antecedent. That Buddha really intended to teach the course of suffering and propose a remedy, therefore is not only well known from the history of his life but has been universally recognized by the Buddhists themselves. This is attested by the often quoted Gatha, ye dharma hetu prabhava hetum tesham tatha gato hyavadat teshancha yo nirodha evam vadi mahashramanaha. To Nagarjuna, however, pratitya samutpada meant a very different thing. He says in the opening verses of his Madhyamika Shastra, anirodhamanutpadamanuchedamashashvatam anekaarthamananarthamanagam anirgamam yah pratitya samutpadam prapanchopashamam shivam deshayamasu sambuddhastam vandeva tatam varam. According to this interpretation, Buddha's teaching implies no annihilation, no origination, no destruction, no preeminence, no unity, no diversity, no coming in, no going out. This corollary is deduced from Buddha's pratitya samutpada itself, or rather that is teaching intended by Buddha according to Nagarjuna, who lays special emphasis on the word pratitya. Pratitya yadyad bhavati nahi tavat tadeva tat na chanyadapi tattasmanochinnam napi shashvatam. Mandukyakarika 18:10. Whatever appears as something relative to something else, surely it cannot be that very thing, nor can it be something other than that. Hence, there is nothing destroyed. To illustrate the procedure of the Madhyamika reasoning, I shall take up the refutation of the cause and effect relation. It will be recollected that we were unable to go all the way with the Professor Bhattacharya, who supposes Gaudapadacharya to have approved of the Ajativada of the Buddhists. I have already touched upon some of the difficulties that his hypothesis has to encounter. Here I am mainly concerned with the method of reasoning that Nagarjuna employs in his refutation of causation. This is how he argues against origination as such. न स्वतो नापि परतो न द्वाभ्यां नाप्यहेतुतः उत्पन्ना जाति विद्यन्ते भावाः क्वचन केचन. माण्डुक्यकारिका 1:1. Again, न स्वतो जायते भावः परतो नैव जायते न स्वतः परतश्चैव जायते जायते कुतः. माण्डुक्यकारिका 21:13. A thing cannot be conceived to be born of its own accord or out of another, neither from both of these nor without any cause. How can there be any real origination when this is found impossible in any one of the alternative ways in which the relation between cause and effect may be conceived? Another work ascribed to Nagarjuna makes this line of argument still more explicit. Bhava bhavanna janma asti tasya bhavasya cha satah janmadanam sambhavati nitya bhavosti bhavyate tadrishi bhavana bhrantirakasha pushpasanniba dharmatahi nabastulya swasamam tasya janmacha. There is no independent entity, hence there is no origination. That the positive entity can take birth out of nothing. That there is an eternal entity which can be born. An idea like this is only an illusion, just like the sky flower. The essence of things indeed is like empty space. Its birth is like empty space. The heart of the Madhyamika argument is yaf pratitya samutpadaha shunyatantam prachakshmahi. That which is known as independent origination we call shunyata, void. The critic of becoming is also the critic of being. Apratiti samutpanno dharmah kaschinna vidyate yasmat tasmad ashunyo hi dharmah kaschinna vidyate. There is nothing which is not born relatively, whence it follows that there can be nothing which is not void. The Nagarjuna quotes Buddha's utterances from different nikayas, referring to the transitory nature of things, and says that shunyata is implied in those texts. In a text in the Madhyama Nikaya or Madhyama Nikaya, for instance, Buddha says that is unreal mrisha, which is of a fleeting nature, Mosha Dharma. That is Nirvana, which is not of a fleeting nature. On this statement, Nagarjuna remarks, Tan Mrisha Mosha Dharma Yadyadi Kim Tatra Mushyate Tattuktam Bhagavata Shunyata Paridipakam. If that which is of a fleeting nature is unreal, what is it that is fleeting here? Evidently, this saying of the Lord reveals the shunyata, essencelessness of things. Gaudapada's reasonings is totally different from all this. As I have said before, he strictly follows the tri-basic method of Vedanta. He finds that the witnessing consciousness present in all the three states is an entity which we cannot help looking upon as our own self, while in deep sleep it remains as one condensed and indivisible consciousness. Ghana Prajnaha, with which all diversity of objects has been rolled into one, as it were, Ekibhuta. It manifests itself as the ego outwardly conscious, Bahih Prajnaha, in waking, and inwardly conscious, Antah Prajnaha, in dream of world, which is the non-ego. Looked at from the standpoint of the waking ego, we are forever ignorant of the existence of an immutable witnessing principle in us. We are not only perfectly in the dark about it in all the three states, but go to the length of misconstruing it as an ego placed in a world of plurality. From the standpoint of intuition, however, and intuition alone has the right to be consulted with regard to the experience of the three states, matters look in a different light altogether. The mass of consciousness in sleep, or rather pure consciousness without any distinctions, remains intact as a witness both in waking and dream, and at the same time seemingly transforms itself into a world of distinctions, internal and external, with reference to the ego. How pure consciousness can stand changeless in its nature and also manifest itself as the manifold world at the same time may not be intelligible to the waking mind, but it is nevertheless an undeniable fact of experience that this manifestation has not really affected the integrity of Atman as pure consciousness can be verified from the fact that whenever waking changes into deep sleep, he remains in his pristine purity. Evidently, then, argues Gaudapada, Atman is neither really changed into the ego and not ego in the waking and the dream states, nor dissolved into one mass of consciousness in sleep. That he is conscious in waking and dream and unconscious in sleep, it is itself the result of a misconception arising from our ignorance of the true nature of our Atman, who is Turiya, or the fourth in relation to his illusory forms in the three states. Only when the individual soul awakes from its beginningless illusory dream, it comes to realize the absolute unborn, sleepless and dreamless. This Karika has been quoted once before, Gaudapada Karika 116. But it bears repetition in this connection also. The sleep referred to here is the ignorance of pure consciousness as which our real self ever remains, and the dream is but the seeing a world of duality in Atman where it is not. Now the Karika says that when a person awakes to the truth, he realizes there is neither this sleep nor this dream from the standpoint of the intuition of Turiya, the real Atman. It is a mistake and a confusion of two different viewpoints, the viewpoint of intuition and that of the intellect restricted to the waking, which is responsible for the attribution of sleep and dream to Atman. Viparyase tayoho kshine turiyam padamashnute. One has taken one's stand in the ever luminous Turiya when one is free from this double misconception. What does it all come to? Gaudapada's critique of being is the key to his critique of becoming. Atman as pure consciousness is at once the source of the conceptions of being and knowing in the empirical world. His being and consciousness are not of the empirical sort. They are absolute, not related to anything else, as Nagarjuna would contend. Atman is Aja, unborn, without any change whatsoever. Change implies time and space, which are restricted to waking and dream, whereas Atman transcends both, as may be verified by a reference to sleep experience. Atman, no doubt, does seem Atman, no doubt, does seem to have changed into a duality of the ego and the non ego in waking and dream, but that must be regarded only as an illusory change, since Atman does not suffer any modification thereby. To the intellect, it appears to be a self contradiction to maintain that any entity conserves its nature while it also changes into something else. But when the possibility of even this feat for Atman is vouched for by intuition, we have to reconcile ourselves to this fact of experience and modify our notion about the waking intellect by restricting its rigorous laws to the fact of waking experience. Hence, Gaudapada does not hesitate to declare with the Upanishads, Nehananeti chamnayadindro mayavirityapi ajayamano bahudha mayajayate tusaha. We have to conclude that he, the Atman, is born only mayikali, illusorily, as it were. For this truth he declares there is no duality here. Indra, Atman, appears to be many through his maya. He is born as many, though really unborn. Next, seventh point is the aim and nature of reason in the Vedanta and the Madhyamika systems. Next, eighth one is absolute according to Gaudapada. That is the eighth one. Next, ninth one, truth and reality. Here it ends the section 3. So, let us complete this section 3. Now, the seventh one, the aim and the nature of reason in the Vedanta and the Madhyamika systems. I think there are so many things are there here. The absolute according to Gaudapada. What is it? Let us see. The absolute of Advaita Vedanta is often confounded with that of the Madhyamika systems. Gaudapada has been alternately credited with having taught the self-same doctrine as that of Vijnanavadin with very little difference, or that of the Madhyamika in a modified form. It has been even suspected that he was himself a Buddhist. His cryptic style of exposition, besprinkled with Buddhistic terms, has earned for his followers the opprobrious epithets of Mayavadins, Buddhists in disguise from non-Advaitic Vedantins. Amidst so much confusion, conjecture and misconception, it is very refreshing to note that Professor T. R. V. Murthy has boldly made his unequivocal statement in his learned work, The Central Philosophy of the Buddhism. If you carefully analyze their respective standpoints, we would find that all these three agree with regard to the logical form of the Absolute as free of empirical determinations and as the essence of phenomena, and also as realized in an intuitive experience. But they differ with regard to the nature of the Absolute, that with which they identify it, and the mode of their approach. It can only make for confusion to ignore the differences. I am glad to be able to say that I wholeheartedly subscribe to this statement. I would fain hope that the reader who has followed the train of reasoning in the preceding pages would readily concur with me in saying so. I fail to see, however, eye to eye with the professor when he makes this categorical statement, Brahman is the absolute of pure being and the method of approach is from the standpoint of knowledge. Vijnapti Matra is pure act, transcendental ideation, and the approach is from the standpoint of the will consciousness. Shunyata is prajna, non-dual intuition, and the approach is from the standpoint of philosophical reflection or criticism. Certain qualifications seem to be necessary at least with regard to the first and the third absolutisms. We have seen that the Vedantic absolute of Gaudapada is the Turiya non-dual principle best described as Eshanetinityatma. This self which is not this, not that, indescribable as being, knowing, or otherwise. The method of approach again is from the standpoint of not mere knowledge but that of reason, nourished by the universal intuition of the three states. As for Shunyata, I am yet to be convinced that it is identical with the Prajna Paramita. I have stated my reasons for this hesitancy in the course of my Sanskrit commentary on the Karikas, especially in connection with the discussion regarding the Shunyata or Shunyavada. But I wish to draw the attention of the reader to two important points here. In the first place, neither Nagarjuna nor his commentators seem to vouch for this identification of Shunyata with the Prajna in any of their writings. In the Vigraha Vyavaharini, in the Madhyamika Karikas, Nagarjuna defines Shunyata as Pratitya Samutpada, which amounts to essencelessness. Yascha Pratitya Bhavo भावानां शून्यतेति साक्ष्युक्ता प्रतीत्यत्र भावो भवति तस्या स्वभावत्वं. His illustration of a man conjured up by the yogic power or magic aptly illustrates the doctrine of essencelessness. निर्मितको निर्मितकं माया पुरुषस्त्वमायया सृष्टं प्रतिषेधयते यद्वत् प्रतिषेधोऽयं तथैव स्यात्. Nagarjuna's explanation of this karika more than bears it out. Evameva madvacanena shunyena sarvabhavanam swabha pratishedha upapannah. So also my word which is void of essence can very well negate the essence of all things. It has been held that the word shunya has a double signification and that it does not mean nisvabhava, having no nature of its own, as applied to the absolute or ultimate reality, but we have no voucher from Nagarjuna for this contention either. So, on the other hand, we find the Prajna Paramita itself expressly recommended in Mahamayana works to be contemplated as Pratitya Samutpanna, originating relatively Nisvabhava, essenceless, and Mayopama, an appearance produced by a magician. Here is an important passage culled from the Abhisamayalankara to this effect. Udaya shunyatvad nastyatmeti vibhavayannatmabhinivesham parityajya tadvivikta subhavam skandhadikam प्रतीत्य समुत्पन्नम उदय व्यय धर्मकम समुपलम्ब्य नीलतद्धियोः सहोपलम्भनियमात् चित्तमात्रमेवेदम इत्यादि etc. Another relevant passage may be cited from the same source, commenting on the Ashta Sahasrika Prajna Paramita. Haribhadra compares not only Prajna Paramita but also Nirvana and everything else beyond it, if there be any such, to Maya and dream. In these circumstances, I think that unless we are prepared to go beyond the professed doctrines of either thought system, we are driven to the conclusion that while the form of absolute appears to be the same in both in so far as it transcends all thought and speech, Gaudapada repeatedly declares in so many words that it is something unborn beyond and sleep, beyond the sleep of ignorance and beyond the dream of knowing a second to itself. Ajamanidram Swapnam, that it is the changeless Tattva, essence of all the world of experience, both within and without us, and indeed of our very self, and that it is an ever refulgent all consciousness. Sakrad Vibhatam Sarvajnam, the absolute of the Madhyamika is Shunyata or relative origination, beyond all multiplicity, the golden mean of knowledge. Yash Shunyatam Praditya Samutpadam Madhyamam Pratipadam Anekartham Nijagada Pranamami Tamaprati Apratima Sambuddham. In a word, he is a Supramental philosophy, failing to see anything positive, negative, or even neutral which can be rightly characterized as the essence of things. He considers it only proper to suspend his judgment in the matter. The means of approach, as I have said before, is reason aided by the intuition of the three states on the one side, and critical reason restricted to the waking state on the other hand. So that is the eighth point. Next, truth and reality. That's the last point here, ninth point. Next, section 4 starts. Gaudapada and certain Sanskrit works. That we shall see in the next session. Now, truth and reality, that's the last point. The doctrine of two truths again illustrates the striking difference between the two systems in point of the application of reason. For the Madhyamika, Shunyata is the absolute reality and a truth in one Paramartha Satya, whereas for Gaudapada, the Advaita Turiya, Atman, transcending all the states of consciousness, is that Paramartha. Samvriti or veiled truth is, according to the Madhyamika, what appears as such to the uncritical mind of the common man, while for Gaudapada it is Paramartha as it appears from the standpoint of the empirical consciousness restricted to the waking state. Each of the true thinkers believes that empirical life remains scratchless by his doctrine of the absolute, and that everything empirical or transcendental can be explained on that basis. Yasya shunyateyam prabhavati tasya sarvartha laukika lokottara prabhavanti. Nagarjuna's own vritti. Sarve chehatu sarvada kalpayetso avishankitah dvaitam tadbhedaishyate. Although the absolute in itself is beyond thought and speech, both the Madhyamika and Gaudapada believe that it can be both taught and caught by means of an assumed suggestive language. Truyate deshyate chapi samaropadanaksharaha. Buddha's saying quoted, Ajah kalpita samritya, etc. Next, section 4, let us see in the next session. Hare Rama. Sarve jana sukino bhavantu, loka samasta sukino bhavantu. Sri 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 Satchidananda Saraswati Swami Charanaravinda Arpitamastu. Om Tat Sat.